It's so interesting how much everything comes back to relationship and connection.
Yeah.
I want to put a theory to you, which is entirely untested and completely intuitive on my part. And it is in this series we're theming around the book I have coming out called Fully Alive. And the chapters are very loosely framed around the 7 deadly sins as a way of thinking about disconnection, which is my definition of sin. We disconnect from our own souls, our own selves, from each other, from the gift of the created world, and obviously, in its most common understanding, from divine love. And in my chapter on gluttony, I spend the first half thinking about addiction and addictive and numbing behaviors and the way we disconnect from ourselves by distracting, numbing, not listening to the things we really want, which is usually comfort and to be affirmed and to be in intimate relationships with other people and to feel safe and to feel known. These deep relational needs, I do stuff them down with doom scrolling or online shopping or booze or food or whatever it is. Yeah. And I have a very deep love of the recovery movement and the wisdom that is in there. But their answer to a lot of that is sobriety, which I'm like, yes. And, or like something about ecstasy, the transcendence, these moments of unselfing. I have a kind of very strange, charismatic Christian Pentecostal practice that still feels very important and very life-giving to me. But I realized I was making this argument in the book that I do not know the field at all well to know if this is something that feels like it's just true in my life or whether there might be a broader experience. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. If I understand you correctly, Elizabeth, I think it's a profoundly important hypothesis you're offering, that, the key to dealing with things like addiction, which is widespread in the United States.
And I mean that in a very broad way, something we're all complicit and caught up in.
Overeating and, drinking too much alcohol, smoking, et cetera. Those are hard habits to kick, really hard. And then you might even add, trauma, like the hijacking of the mind by trauma. And maybe the pathway to healing is through awe and transcendence, and that's been sort of an animating idea in our lab, and we've published work on this, that why awe is good for, we took veterans rafting for a half day, and they had a 32% drop in PTSD symptoms for a week, right? That's powerful to do a half a day of something to take a third of PTSD away from someone. And so I think it is, I think it's a cutting edge hypothesis that maybe what we should be orienting therapies toward, addiction approaches toward, trauma treatment toward, is getting people to find the vast things they're connected to, their connectedness, like you said. And that's such a radically different view of the typical Western European view of like addiction is some dopamine malfunction in the brain. Depression is a serotonin malfunction. We now know that's not true.
Yeah.
And so I think we got to be looking to this deeper connectedness that you're talking about. I think is really, I hope the work lives up to your thinking.
Yeah. Well, it was just through talking through a lot of people. I had a lovely conversation with Nick Cave, and Nick Caves talks about the similarity between the thing he was looking for in his heroin addiction and the thing that he's interested in church is depth. Is, William James calls it the more. And it's right there in the recovery stuff, right? Young talks about, he was writing about it early on about the God, however you understand them, and whether it's removable or not. And he was like, he talked about spiritus contra spiritum, that the Latin for alcohol and the Latin for spirit it's the same word essentially, and that we need spirit in order to, sate the craving for vodka. And it's a hard thing in a culture that doesn't know how to talk about spirit and is scared of spirituality, and for some good reasons very cautious about religion, right? To say, actually, it's a metaphysical yearning that you're trying to sate with consumerism or workaholism or an eating disorder or whatever it is.
You're heading into such, and I'm embarrassed I haven't thought about this as much, but you're offering a really deep scientific idea in the social sciences.
No one's ever said that to me before.
Well, in the social sciences, we're reconceptualizing what needs humans have. And so there first was a paper on the need to connect and belong. And then my collaborator, Cameron Anderson, said, we have a need for status and respect. William James, the deepest urge we have is to be appreciated. And you're pushing it and saying, we have a need for connecting to the transcendent, right? To spirit or, transcendent music, et cetera. And I agree. I think that for me, human evolution built into us this capacity to connect the individual self to large systems out in the world, an ecosystem, a cultural system, a family system, a spiritual system. And that probably neurophysiologically has the structure and function of need, right? Which is, I hunger for this. It involves, the vagus nerve and oxytocin and a lot of neurophysiological systems that, when satisfied, feels fulfilling. And I think today, when I look at young people and hear about the meaning crisis and the mental health crisis, to me, it's that they're not connecting to larger things to guide their lives, what some people would call spirit or soul or so.
Yeah. I think it was originally at the top of Maslow's hierarchy, self-transcendence, and it often gets translated in the literature without it. And he has very interesting things to say about religion and ecstatic experiences and what they mean. But anyway, I won't go into that. So I want to land with that question really about how we create the structures for these things.
Yeah.
And one of the cases that I'm making in the book is I am both a Christian in the sense that I believe it, right? It is not just an instrumental exercise for me. I think there's truth in that. And I have also, having been in it and then out of it and then in it again, have come to see the sort of deep psychological insight that being part of a religious tradition in the healthy forms, huge caveat, can bring us. That these actually insights like how important we need awe, and you've written elsewhere about compassion, and I didn't get to talk to you about the power principle and this amazing thing about the more power and privilege that we have, actually the harder it is to sustain a healthy character. Yeah. And I think that I write about that. There's something going on about the way money works and power and relationship and the need for interdependence, and power and privilege takes you away from interdependence, and you cannot be fully human if you're not interdependent. That I've basically landed right back in. I don't know how you do it without religion. I don't know how you do it without communal, robust, ritualized, imaginatively embodied spiritual pathways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But religion can also be the worst thing in the world when it goes wrong.
Yeah. As the atheist.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Religion makes people happier. Religion makes people healthier. Religion makes people less vulnerable to major episodes of depression. Those are robust empirical findings. And then you have this, and of course, as the Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and others have observed, 20 years ago, religion leads to wars, and, it's causing turmoil on our college campuses here. So it's a complicated thing. It's part of our human history. And what I'm interested in as a psychologist is that, young people around the world are moving away from religion. Its attendance is plummeting. Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times called it the de-churching of the United States. That's true. And then at the same time, the people are creating spiritual paths through alternative means. They are meditating like never before, yoga studios, et cetera, And so what I have pursued, both personally, I'm not a religious person, and then in my teachings of a de-churching population, is find what's great about religions and build it into your life. Find your rituals, find your ways of of having, periods of quiet and reflection. Find your pilgrimages, find the music that is sacred to you, find the iconography that matters to you. For me, it's posters of Iggy Pop, so, we can rebuild with all of those elements of religion. And Nick Cave. I'm a deep fan of Nick Cave and admire him, and glad to hear his name. So that's what we have to do. We have a meaning crisis in young people. In some sense, it probably tracks the abandonment of formal religion. So let's recreate it and see where it goes, which is what's happening. And I think we just need to be more intentional about it.